Howdy Vikings, we're here to do our iron filings lab. You'll need all these non-consumable items right here. We have a balance, a hot plate, a ceramic tile, a 50 milliliter beaker, a spatula, a stirring rod, a 250 milliliter beaker, a thermometer, a 50 milliliter graduated cylinder, and these are our consumables. I'll also need some beaker tongs. I will need some copper sulfate and some iron. I've already weighed these out just to save some time. So at the beginning of the lab, you'll be weighing out your consumables, your copper sulfate and your iron. And the first step is to find the mass of your beaker. So I'm going to add my beaker to my balance. I'm going to record the mass. I'm then going to add my copper sulfate, and I'm going to record that mass. So this mass is, and so now the next goal is to dissolve the copper sulfate. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to add about 50 milliliters of water. It will not dissolve right away, as you can tell, so I'm going to have to encourage it a little bit by stirring it, and I'm also going to have to put it on the hot plate. I'm going to add heat to it to help it dissolve. So, when you stir it, there are two ends to the stirring rod. There is an end right here for when you're not heating, whenever it's more a delicate end, but you want to use the end that is pure glass, because we are heating it. So you want to use this end right here. And so you will stir it occasionally and just let it heat up. Now the important thing is that you do not heat it to boiling. It will boil at about 100 degrees Celsius. So you want it to heat it up to about 50 degrees. Should be about enough. Right now it's reading about 22. Okay? So we're going to pause for a minute while we let this dissolve, and we'll come back to you. Alright, we're back, and it is starting to become kind of clear. I've been stirring it occasionally, and I want to emphasize one important thing, is that whenever you stir, please never stir with this thermometer. It is not there for stirring, and you could break it, and that wouldn't be so good. And also, whenever you are taking your your room temperature beaker, you never want to put it onto a hot plate. You always want to unplug the hot plate and make sure that it's cool whenever you put it on there. So everything, and while this is heating up and while this is starting to dissolve, is a great time to add your iron as well, because you will have about 10 minutes right there. Alright, so it's ready to go. And we are going to unplug our hot plate so it can start cooling down for the next class, because we're done with it. I'm going to take my copper sulfate, and I'm going to use these beaker tongs. These are beaker tongs. And I have to very carefully hold it and then move it to a ceramic tile. The reason why we use these ceramic tiles is so that it dissipates the heat more evenly, and it's not touching a cold lab table. That way we don't break the beaker. Now you want to go ahead and do your reaction while this is warm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my iron to this right away. And I want to add it just kind of slowly. And you should see a pretty immediate change as you do this. Okay? Now as this goes, you may see some solid floating. You want to go ahead and stir it on up. And keep on stirring. Make sure you stir all the contents, and so all those little molecules can react with each other. Alright? So, at this point, I want you to be able to make some observations about your reaction. You need to have 5 in your lab table. And then, we're going to wait for this to cool down for a little bit. Okay, so after 10 minutes, after it's all been reacted it should have kind of cooled down, and you should see a pretty solid reaction. Now, if there are still some solids floating in the top, I recommend you take your stirring rod and kind of poke them down. They should fall down to the bottom. So as this goes, you want to take, just to be safe, you want to take your beaker tongs and you want to decant this liquid. Now, decanting means that I'm going to pour out the liquid only and leave the solid. So I am decanting it. By doing this, I'm getting rid of this waste product. Okay? Now, this beaker right here is my waste beaker. This is a product that I'm not really concerned about, and I'm not really concerned with the mass. I'm just putting it there just to isolate it from my actual product. And then I have some cool little product down in here at the bottom. You see that nice copper. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse it out. So I'm going to use my wash bottle that has deionized water. I'm going to try to get rid of all of this excess stuff that maybe didn't react or is just kind of left over. So I'm going to have to rinse it a couple of times. So by decanting it every time. So the rule of rinsing is that you're supposed to do it 3 times. Pretty much the golden rule of rinsing in chemistry. So this is 2 times right here. And I'll do it one more. And it doesn't matter how much water you add. Well, I wouldn't recommend adding a whole lot, but just add a little bit. And the water you pour off should be almost clear. Now, this is an absolutely beautiful reaction and with a beautiful product. Now, the last step is to kind of spread out this copper at the bottom so that it can air dry overnight. We're going to come back the next day and we're going to take the mass of this last bit of copper. Any water you can get out will be helpful for your last data. Okay? All right, thank y'all.